Hey everyone, this is Alexander Alcala. So in regards to the discussion, most recent negotiation situation that I was involved in was a couple weeks back. We went to the flea market. We try to go every once in a while, but of course, when you go to the flea market, you take cash and whatnot. So there was just one stand that I passed by a lot that this gentleman has a bunch of retro video game stuff and toys and everything that I'm into because he has a bunch of like 90s stuff, Sega, Nintendo, things like that. Anyways, so there was a toy, an action figure. It was a Rock'em Sock'em from back in the 90s. It was a Mortal Kombat, which I was heavily into growing up as a kid. And I asked him how much he wanted for it, and he told me, I think at $30, $35. And I felt like that was too high. And I looked at it and I was like, I mean, it's really in good shape though. It was just a little dusty, the toy itself, but it was in real good condition. But the sticker was a little torn, and then underneath where you put the batteries, it was missing the compartment. So I had told him, hey, it's missing a few things. Are you can you come down lower? And then he goes, I tell you what. He was like, why don't you go walk around, come back later on, and I'll test it out for you, and then we'll go from there. I was like, okay. So it was right when we got there, and then next thing you know, it was probably like 3:30 is when we went back. When we were leaving, we were heading out, and I had asked him, I was like, hey, were you able to test it? And he looks at me, goes, oh, no, I'm sorry. And he was kind of busy, so I used that to my advantage, and I was like, hey, look, I really want it, and you didn't test it out for me, so I don't know if it's gonna work. And then if you want $30, it's gonna be pretty pricey. So anyways, make a long story short, we came down to it, and I ended up getting it for 15, which was half. Which I felt like that was a win, because with the distributive bargaining, the elements is, of course, it's competitive, right? So with him selling all these retro toys, games, I mean, he's real competitive, and most of the time he's real firm. And I know one of the characteristics that I noticed as far as a part of distributive bargaining is that it's on his ground, which was a flea market, his shop. But I also had my wife and then my kids there too as well, so they were kind of with me, having more than one negotiator, even though they weren't talking, but it was just their presence was there. So I think that was a win-win for me right there in that situation. So being able to talk him down from 35 to 15. And when I got home, I tested it out, and the thing worked perfect. I cleaned it up, and it's sitting there, with my other collection of retro stuff that I like to collect, of course, for myself and for my kids. But I felt like it was a win, because I was more than half off when I got here. It worked like a charm, like if nothing was wrong with it at all. So in a way, it was kind of like pressuring him a little bit, using those tactics, like, hey, I put the pressure on him when I came back, like, hey, well, you didn't do this, you didn't try it out. Kind of put it back on him, and he kind of felt a little uneasy, like maybe he didn't know if it worked, maybe he just picked it up from somebody and he was just trying to sell it. But so I was really happy about that, being able to score that for such a pretty good price, especially with it being in working condition. So I mean, that's how I feel like that was part of the example of the distributive bargaining that we read about in this week's reading. So being the fact that it's part of that negotiation process, and with it being competitive, I felt like I was the one that walked away, and won, not him. So that's why I feel like this negotiation situation specifically pertains to that. I mean, we do it every day. I do it all the time. eBay's a perfect example when everything's best offer. But this one, I felt like it was a perfect example, especially, with it being just, fairly recent, and it's something real simple, nothing too crazy, but, it was definitely a win-win for me. So, that was the example. Thank you. Bye.